Going on, my friends? This is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel. Yeah, this is a channel for you. Hey guys, this is Rick, and this is your seat at the table. And right there, I'm having a little bit of technical issues because my little buttons here on this uh, web technology thing I use to create these videos kind of got a little convoluted for me. This is X video something or another. What the hell is this thing? You know, I just get lovelier and lovelier and lovelier. What is it? XSplit broadcaster, and then I can't find then things click off and then things get lost, and I'm just having a wonderful time with it. Anyway, hey guys, we are looking at not Palladium, the fantasy role-playing game, but something that was produced by the Palladium Book Company. And the Palladium came out in 1980. And it was the beginning era for most of the more modern wargaming, tabletop wargaming, role-playing game, role-playing game systems and things. Battletechs, or damn it, yeah, let me get my act together here. TSR's Dungeons and Dragons, advanced set of Dungeons and Dragons, had been out for a couple of years, and Rollmaster was out, and was it Laminations of a Flame Princess, which was a game system I never saw until a few years ago, and somebody else was there's a new version of it, but it actually came out right on the tail end of Dungeons and Dragons, the original stuff in the mid 70s. And matter of fact, Gary Gygax was highly praised it as a game system, but I never saw it on any of the bookshelves when I was a kid. It never made it into the catalogs that I knew about, and if it did, I never paid attention to it. Anyway, so Palladium had this series books, and this is just one in this series. And this will be the third edition version. And I bought this in the mid to early 80s. And there was one for castles and samurai, I think, and then there was oh gee, there was like eight or nine or maybe 10 of them. And I bought most of them, and I did not buy the Palladium because when I looked at the Palladium and I said, geez, I've already got Rollmaster at that time, and I got Battletech or damn it, Dungeons and Dragons. I got Battletech on the brain, Dungeons and Dragons, and a couple other smaller systems at that point. Judges Guild, although Judges Guild is a sandbox and not a rule set, so it didn't have a rule set with it. It was built. Judges Guild was actually built on Dungeons and Dragons, and that's something that's interesting because in Dungeons and Dragons, it's a hot topic right now that Wizards of the Coast is dealing with this trying to change their open gaming license, and what people tend to forget, or the people at Hasbro don't give a shit about, or the people running WotC don't give a shit about, is that open gaming license. The concept behind it has been around since the earliest days. Gary Gygax highly recommended people to do stuff and to create things and to tap his material to form other stuff. And so he had no problems with it. So that's why he was very acceptive and supportive of other competing companies and things like this, because it all fed the bulldog. And so this was one of those. And like I said, I had a whole series of these things, and this unfortunately is the only one that I have left. I suspect that these were in the same box that had a bunch of my battle technology and some of my Dragon magazines and stuff that got stuck out in my folks' barn and destroyed by the weather and gophers. I was not at home at the time. I was not living at home, and I had been out of circulation for a long time. And my cousin took it upon himself to move a bunch of crap out of the attic where I had stored it in my folks' house to make room for, I don't know, his mom's crap and shoved my crap out into the garage or the barn. And of course, the barn has open stalls and cracks in the walls, and so the weather is not kind to the material inside, and they were destroyed. That's just, and I'll never stop bitching about that. He's dead now. I buried him a couple years or last year because that really put a big wall between me and him. The way him and his mom had taken advantage of my mom when I was unaware of it. And when I found out and came back home and I literally cleaned up the mess. It was horrific, and it took me and the wife a better part of a year to clean up the disaster that they turned my folks' property and house into. I was extremely upset about it. I guess I'm still upset about it. Anyway, unrelated. So this book cost me $5.95, $6, and it's talking about, of course, weapons and assassins, the weapons that assassins use. So we have an introduction to weapons and assassins, guilds and societies. Then we have the Order of the Assassins, the Thugs, and the Ninja. Then we have things like Poisonous Directory of Assassin Terms, bibliography, and chronology. And then we have some maps of the Middle East of the Order of the Assassins, Thuggees India, and Ninja Japan. So this was, so here we go. Published by Palladium Books, copyright 1983. So that's when this book was put out, and it still has the original tag that Ivor put in on it in his store. And I think it probably would have been 85 or 86 when I bought it, because I had been looking at other stuff, and I had a little bit more money in my pocket because I had a job that I was living with my parents and spending most of my money on. I'm gonna be honest, man. I spent a good chunk of my money on buying weed every week and going to the bars and partying, and the rest of it went on junk food and buying game material from yeah. So that's why I spent my late 80s, early 90s, and it took me years to get my act together. And part of me is still trying to get my act together. I mean, it's late to the game kind of thing. So I bought it because of the material. I think I picked up the second edition rule book for the it would have been Thieves at the time. Eventually they changed to Rogues, but we also had a book on Assassins, and I still have those books, and at some point I'm going to review those. And I picked this up because it added extra information and flavor that I could tap for the game. And I knew of a fellow back in the day when I was playing heavily. When I meant heavily, Jesus, we played every damn day, every opportunity we played. And when we weren't playing in our small group, we were playing in other people's groups and ad hoc games at wherever. And I knew a fellow that had Palladium, and so I played a couple as a player in a couple of his games. And it's a good system, and it had a lot of options. And the thing was, a lot of the game systems then still hold true today, is that they're basically carbon copies, or maybe not exactly carbon copies of each other, but that's the nutshell. That was my mindset. So why buy yet another game system? It's like, so when Middle Earth role-playing game came out, MERP came out, the only reason I brought the rule book for MERP was because at that time I was starting to get, okay, need to have the book just so I have some more information in there. But the lion's share of the sandbox, the source books, the adventure modules, those things, those are the material that I bought because I love Tolkien's world. And the more information I could not, I was a sponge, I couldn't get enough of it. So I bought the rules too. And I did that for a number of other game systems as well. Others when I looked at, so it's like when Pathfinder came out. I looked at Pathfinder and I looked at my D&D, my very extensive D&D collection, and went, I can't justify buying yet another complete sword and sorcery style game system. And some people do. Some people love that. They buy the new game system for the system, not necessarily for the sandbox it's set in, but for the system. Where I like to buy the sandbox. I want to buy the world, and then if necessary, adapt the existing system that I know and I'm familiar with, and my friends are familiar with, and utilize that. And that can be a lazy man's way of doing things. But I mean, I fully understand what it takes to create a game system. All you got to do is look at the videos I'm doing in parallel to these videos on A Game Not Traveled to understand that I damn well deeply understand how much work goes into creating rule systems and everything that goes with it. So anyway, so the Palladium role-playing game system, and in this weapons series, we had the book on weapons and armor, which I had, a book on weapons and castles, book of contemporary weapons, which is one I had. I got that one because it really ran. It was toward the end of the last. They didn't have any more copies. They weren't putting more of these book copies out. But Ivor always kept whatever he had until he sold it. So he would have this. They would just keep getting relegated to other boxes, and eventually they would end up in the bottom, which you might consider a bargain books box, at the bottom of the shelf. Kind of, you had to know where it was to pull it out and dig through it. And a lot of people didn't even know it was there, and other people would think it was discards or leftovers or something, so they wouldn't even look at it. And I knew to dig out that box because I never knew what Ivor might put in there. And so I got the contemporary weapons when Twilight 2000 came out, because I thought, hey, any book on this is going to add more books to it. Weapons and Castles of the Orient, and I think there was something else. There was one of these, yeah. Here it is, the European Castles. This is one I didn't get. So all these, I had them, and like I said, they got lost or destroyed, or they just disappeared. I mean, honest to God, I don't know. So I know that these are still available. You can still find these things because I Googled it. You can get PDFs of it. You can actually find the actual physical books for sale. And as you can tell, I bought this book in, like I said, 83, 85, sometime in there. And this book was published in 80, what did I say it was? 83. So considering how old this book is, it's held up real well. And one of the interesting notes that you may not give a damn about, but I'll bring it to you anyway, because trivia and interesting crap is a fun thing. Palladium is actually the first company to successfully learn how to bind their books up and bind them well. Books prior to that were made on crappy paper with crappy typeface. A lot of it was very amateur looking, like somebody had printed it up on in their garage, which in truth they probably very well did. And then they were just crudely stapled together, if they were stapled together at all. Or you might find the cruder versions of this binding, right? And like I was saying earlier, if you think this 500-page frickin' combo between this and the other two books happened in a few days, you're a lunatic. Because I know I'm a lunatic that created the damn thing. So I know. And this is the fifth. It says 5.0 on the bottom for a reason, because it's the fifth revision of the original crap, which was only like 40 pages or something. So when you look at these things, hey, I thought this would be an interesting thing to share, and I wish I had the others to share with them. The information in here, well, geez, it's all common. I mean, another thing to take into account, this day and age today, in the last 30 years, we have an advantage. The internet makes huge advantages, because from a creator's perspective, from a game master's perspective, you have an endless amount of material at the touch of a finger. You want exotic locations and ideas for exotic, just type up ask for travel to exotic locations, and boom, bang, you've got, gobs of information. You want to know about weapons and assassins and etc. Bing, bang, boom. Just be aware that popping up certain things like asking about assassins and assassinations may get you a whole slew of conspiracy stuff in your email, and might also bring you under the radar of a dozen different government entities. But that said, if you go back to the 70s and 80s, none of that existed. And the only way to really get information was do one of two things, or three. Find somebody else who knew about it, and then you had to decide whether or not they were full of, blowing smoke up your backside, or they actually knew what they were talking about. B, go to the library and research it yourself. I spent many hours in the library looking up things so I could just, for minor details for game campaigns, because that was a huge source for material. And of course, having somebody make these books up and other books of this nature. This was another reason why, if you were a game master, a dungeon master, you really became a historian and a bibliophile, because you really found the desire to have yet more books, more source material, more information, because you never knew what you would know, what something would come in handy in your campaign, or setting up an adventure, or preparing for a puzzle or a trap or what have you, setting up the environment and the atmosphere. This is what sets the game master apart from the player. Most game masters or dungeon masters, it's not PC to call them dungeon masters hardly anymore, but most storytellers, they've been players. And don't get me wrong, players put some work in. There's a lot of effort goes into playing well. There's a whole bunch of people out there putting out lots and lots of videos on tips and how-tos and suggestions and examples of how to be a good player and how to play well, how to play into character and things like this, how to be the theater of the mind. Then there's the other side of the game. And this is why, when it comes to the mechanics of things, when you talk about the money into stuff, this is where WotC and so Hasbro and CGL and 100 other companies out there today best keep in mind that a lion's share of the material that they produce is purchased by a handful of people. In relative, you may have one game master, one dungeon master to 100 players. So those 100 players may buy a handful of books. I mean, most players, you better own at least your version of the handbook, because it's just kind of common courtesy. If you're going to be a regular long-term player, you should have some of the tools that you need to be a good player. You should not be asking the guy that's the DM to keep borrowing his only copy of that stuff, because that's not fair. Or if you're a wealthy enough game master, perhaps you have a dozen copies of the handbook laying around that you can loan out as if you're in a library. But most of us couldn't have that and don't have that luxury. And then we're constantly looking for the next thing. And we have to weigh, do we want this book or we don't want that book? It's like when I did the video for Dawn of the Jihad, and I look at the way the layout of the book is. As a source book on the Jihad, at the opening year of the Jihad, it's a hot mess and it's horrible. It's a horrible book for anybody, whether you're the player or the game master. If you're just looking for some crap entertainment in short bursts, then it's a good book. But as a game tool, as a game source, oh my God, it's horrible. And I did a video on it. Then so anyway, that's me ranting and raving about that sort of crap and a few other damn things you really didn't give it a shit about. Till next time, this is Rick, and I hope you guys have yourself a whatever the hell it is you're doing, right? And maybe, just maybe, I can get this stuff in frickin' right damn order.